Obelisk with the boss, you have to deal with those awakened mechanics while you're dealing with the intermission phase on Volzith. That's just so many things to deal with at the same time. Something's almost always bound to go wrong unless you're playing absolutely perfectly. So seeing a high wipe rate like that makes perfect sense.
Without question, the game's getting ready to go as WUNDERBAR and Ethical are stepping up and getting ready to face off in Shrine.
Alright, so we see very interesting comps already by both of the teams running the double DK here for Shrine. While WUNDERBAR is playing a Hunter, Ethical chose to play the Demon Hunter as their third DPS to buff the damage of the Unholy DKs, which are doing mostly magic damage, so you benefit off the magic increase that the Demon Hunter provides. Nice Sanguine management here by WUNDERBAR. Ethical, on the other hand, already done with their pull though, so Ethical definitely was faster with cleaning this up.
And I'm actually curious to check out what Arrow's running here as well, because there's been a popular build that people have been playing on live servers where they run this Blood Barrage setup. So they run Blood of the Enemy, Fell Barrage, and then they also use the Miraculous Fang Trinket from Temple of Sethralus. And it gives them probably some of the best burst AoE damage in the game, outside of maybe Unholy DKs. So they definitely bursted that pack down way faster than WUNDERBAR did, and being able to burst down these Sanguine packs is going to be pretty useful in this dungeon.
But WUNDERBAR just skipped right past the Obelisk, which is very interesting to see because this Obelisk is Void Weaver, and playing Void Weaver with the last boss is very difficult just because of the way the boss works with the intermission phase, where you need to interrupt the denizens, otherwise they're not only going to do a huge AoE, but they're also going to heal to full HP if you don't interrupt. So they're probably planning on nuking down Void Weaver in the last boss before the intermission phase starts, but that's going to require a huge amount of damage, and now we see them pull a bunch of trash on top of Aquaseer here. The Sanguine management is going to be really important for them.
And the thing about their comp is it's really great for dealing with that particular thing. Double Unholy DK can do a lot of single target damage to one focused target, and because it's fortified, they don't actually necessarily need to get the boss that low in the first phase in order to be able to one phase it later on. So if like maybe 2 sets of eels onto that final boss and just focus fire down Void Weaver Malthier without having to use too many interrupts, they should be totally fine for the intermission phase. So once again, WUNDERBAR, as we know them, they're going for the more difficult strategy. But almost, you know, as is usual, if they're able to pull it off, they should have a faster time here, but let's keep an eye on this. They're already in the intermission phase on Aquaseer, whereas Ethical has just now started pulling this.
Yeah, so Ethical also pulling a lot of trash on top of Aquaseer here. You saw they managed to Sanguine pretty nicely on their side as well. It's really important to deal with the Sanguine, not only so the mobs don't heal, but also so you position it properly so the intermission ads don't heal, because on 50% he splits into 3 Aqualings, and those ones stand on Sanguine, and it's going to be a huge time loss. And both of the teams also used their Bloodlust here for that boss. They saved it until here. They should have the same amount of Bloodlust for both sides in the dungeon.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And I mean, you can see the difference here as well. Now Ethical did pull a slight bit extra trash compared to WUNDERBAR as well. They have 5% extra trash on the board. They also did have the Awakened lock. But you know, unfortunate for them here. Yeah, a little bit of unfortunate issues for Ethical there. Going to cost them a little bit more time. WUNDERBAR actually going back to, are they pulling? Are they about to snap some trash here? Oh, that looks like they are.
Looks like it's. Oh, okay.
That's a new spot. Wow, I don't think I've seen that one before.
As well.
Have we seen that?
Oh, do you think
the living current in there.
Oh,
that might be a line of sight spot.
Yeah,
they might get knocked up. Yeah, you're right.
Huh, okay, so this is a really cool step by WUNDERBAR. Basically, they are snapping a lot of mobs here with a living current on top of one spot, and this rising tide, the one that knocks you into the air, it actually just is line of sightable. So everyone was running line of sight when the ability happened, so only now got knocked, while everyone else was not getting hit by that ability. And yeah, just some extra trash percentage they're doing here. They're up to 37% now.
Yeah, I mean, that caught them back up and put them very squarely in the lead now. I mean, they still do have the extra Awakened Mob and Void Weaver Malthier to deal with, but I'd imagine that shouldn't be an issue for them if they're comfortable enough in practice to just do that with the final boss. So they'll have to keep an eye on what they plan on doing. They might even go for just other Awakened Mobs as well, since they have the Unholy DK AoE burst.
Yeah, maybe. So they're dealing with some trash here in this hallway. This can be a dangerous spot in the dungeon if you have Sanguine, just because the hallway is so narrow, so if you drop a Sanguine there, there's no way for the mobs to walk around it. It's basically just filling up the whole hallway, one Sanguine pool. And that's why we've seen teams before just hide it all the way up to outside of the room, basically, where Helldis is. But that's going to cost you time because you're basically backtracking. So it looks like WUNDERBAR is not doing any of that backtracking. You just kill it right there where it is and then move on. Some of these mobs are also running away as they're low the initiates. So you want to be sure you're saving your AoE stuns and your binding shots to when they run away, so you don't have the Sanguine pools all over the place.
Oh man. Well, back to a full health Aquaseer it is for Ethical.
Oh no.
Yeah, they're just gonna have to chunk through the entire boss's HP. I mean, it is on Fortified, but it's still a lot of HP to chunk through on 21, so that's gonna cost them probably a solid 2 or 3 minutes here. Man, that's really unfortunate to see from them. And I mean, this is just kind of the same thing that was happening yesterday. They were having these unfortunate mistakes at the start of the dungeon here, but they got bailed out by the other team making even more egregious mistakes later on in the dungeon. I don't think that's gonna happen to WUNDERBAR though.
Is he gonna do a second intermission phase? No, right?
I don't think so. I'd be very surprised if that's how it worked.
But that would be, yeah, that would be very unfortunate if they actually would have to go through a second one. We will see once the boss reaches. Oh no, Shape actually going down to the Surging Rush here. They do have a Battle Rush available, but yeah, it's still just another mistake here by Ethical, unfortunately. While WUNDERBAR, on the other hand, they already moved on. They are on 56% trash, dealing with one of the obelisks. Looks like... Okay, so it looks like they're using the obelisk to skip the initiates, which makes sense because it's Sanguine, but there's actually a spot where you can snap those mobs to, where Sanguine doesn't heal them. So maybe not. Okay, it looks like they're pulling the initiates.
Looks like he's pulling them up, yeah. Okay. They're gonna let the DK stack their
oh yeah.
bursting stacks on them and then just pop them all on the boss, and then they've got to ring a piece if they really want to knock them away. But I mean, they all instantly died anyways, so it doesn't even really matter. The only thing that's really going to be an issue are these 2 attendants that are on top of the boss. Looks like they saved the ring a piece for that, and there they go right now.
Yeah, so doing a pretty good job dealing with Sanguine here. I think Brother Ironhall was standing in the Sanguine for a little while there, but didn't cost them too much time, so they should be able to finish it off now. Looks like they're now also moving to the side, so they can basically ignore the tornadoes. This spot basically just means that you can attack from the top, and the tornadoes don't reach you, so it's very convenient for these teams. Not only is it safer to play it this way, at least for everyone except the tank, but you also don't lose any DPS on your melees from having to dodge the tornadoes.
Just a pretty typical strategy that we've seen. I believe we saw that first in the second half of last season, so this is just something that people have adapted to doing and making sure they can dodge those tornadoes and lets you evenly cleave them down, like you mentioned, just free, efficient DPS. And because they dealt with the trash the way they did, they're not going for the burn down Gale Caller and then cleave trash on top of Brother Ironhole afterwards strategy that we sometimes see other teams employ. So just going to be cleaving these 2 down and then probably moving on to the rest of the dungeon. Now, the interesting thing is, since they dealt with the Awakened Obelisk already, they're going to have to do some sort of Shadow Meld skip to get through this this next gauntlet section of the dungeon before they get to the bridge, and that can be kind of a pain to deal with.
Yeah, so they definitely don't have to do that much trash anymore, because they're already 62% and they need approximately 80%, a little bit more than 80, before they go to the last boss, so not that much left for them to do here. We see 2 deaths come in by Ethical though, unfortunately. They were doing a pretty huge pull on their side. I think they pulled all of the room inside, except the mini-boss, on top of Helldis here. And we saw Skylight just all snap it onto one of those lanterns. So that was a pretty huge pull that they did, but unfortunately they had those 2 deaths. Not really sure if they managed to finish off the rest of the trash, but it looks like Chompy's actually going into the Nihilotha realm to do some sort of skip on the other side. Well, WUNDERBAR is looking like doing a pretty huge Enforcer pull on this side, so after this Enforcer pull, I think they can skip the whole bridge.
I'm trying to do the quick math in my head. I think they need a little bit more trash. I think they might have to do 2 of the bridge packs in order to get to the trash percentage they want to get to. Although they do still have 3 awakened mobs at the final boss, and I mean, this is going to be a lot of percentage right here. They still do have that ritualist as well. They'll need some of the trash on the bridge.
Yeah, I forgot.
Probably all of it actually on Teeming.
Yeah, true.
Probably all.
Shrine on Teeming is like you basically have to play the whole dungeon.
Yeah, pretty much.
It can be really annoying, and that's probably also why we saw them do this like living current pull that we have never seen before, just because you really need so much percentage on teaming. But now it looks like they're doing a Shadow Melt skip. That's why they all basically just ran through the mobs, because once you just all Shadow Melt, you're going to be getting rid of all that aggro. And now let's see how big of a pull they're doing on this bridge, or if they're just skipping. I think we see this skip where they only deal with the cultists, or we've seen that we see some teams do this skip, but Fragments seems to be... Oh no, yeah, exactly. Okay, so basically they're doing the skip where they skip the tentacles, but they deal with the cultists, so they get a little bit of extra percentage here.
Well, also, when you skip the tentacles pack as well, you don't have any potential for Sanguine to be dropped on top of the tentacles, which can be, you know, if that happens, you just have to sit there and wait for the Sanguine to go away because you're not going to be DPSing through it. Unfortunately for Ethical, more issues on their side as Skylark goes down, and it looks like it's going to be multiple people going down for them, and they're just not having a good time at the start of the Shrine of the Storm.
Yeah, it's really not looking good for them, while WUNDERBAR, on the other hand, did a pretty nice job dealing with the Sanguine. One other good thing about DKs, except their huge amount of AoE damage that they have, is also the fact that they have this single target grip, which can be really helpful for Sanguine. Sally dropping incredibly low, as you got a lot of lash cast there on him. And wow, the amount of damage coming out of these dwellers, almost one-shotting Sally. I did manage to recover though, and now they're moving on to Lord Stormsong. They do have the Bloodlust available, but it's very likely they are saving it for the last boss, because they have 3 obelisks they have to deal with here.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, they don't really have that many stops for those tentacles, right?
Yeah.
They can get like one wave of all of them with a shockwave and a leg sweep, and then that's it. They only have like the intimidation from Jinji and like maybe the single target interrupts or single target stuns from the DKs. That's it. So once that first initial wave gets stunned, they're just getting hit by everything. You saw like 30 stacks going on top of the entire group, so that could have been very dangerous there if one person got focus fired down, but able to heal through it. Zaylia, of course, one of the best healers in the game right now, able to make sure nobody goes down. And yeah, just difficult scenarios just being dealt with cleanly by WUNDERBAR. You know, it's just how they do it.
Yeah, they're also on 0 deaths so far, so incredibly clean run here by WUNDERBAR. And now we also saw an immunity coming out, Turtle plus 2 AMS by the DKs to immune that mind control, the mind bender. The only person that does not have an immunity for it is Saalia, and thankfully they didn't get the mind bender on him, so they were able to completely just skip that ability. And this time they weren't able to skip it, but it was on Saalia, so the one target that is doing the least amount of damage in their team, and therefore another lucky pick here on the WUNDERBAR side.
Yeah, on this key setting, it can be kind of dangerous for your healer to get picked, but fortunately they have a good enough comp where even if, you know, one of the DPS gets hit by both rip mines in a row, that they can easily just heal themselves through it. You know, the DKs can Death Strike if they need to. The Hunter can use his Exhilaration to heal himself and top himself off, so not that big of an issue for the healer to get chosen. And like you said, probably better in most scenarios, since they can just keep DPSing the boss while the healer goes and dips in the pool. So good luck so far for WUNDERBAR here, and they're on a kind of a blazing fast run here. 0 deaths, 13 minutes swimming to the final platform here. I mean, could we be seeing like a sub maybe 17-minute run? I'm interested to see how much of an issue these awakened mobs are going to be for them, though.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen lots of wipes on this last boss, just because not only does this boss take a long time, but teams make it really difficult on themselves by trying to fight as many mobs as possible while fighting the boss, because this boss applies a debuff to the healer, which not only decreases the healer's max HP, but it also increases damage the healer does. And therefore you just want to make sure you fight as many trash packs as possible while the healer has this damage increase. So that's why a lot of teams just make it hard on themselves. That's why they pull a lot of eel packs on top of this boss as well. And now you see all of the awakened mobs swarming in. They have to make sure they finish off Void Weaver here, because they cannot interrupt the boss in the intermission phase. They have to save their interrupts for the denizens. And there we go, Void Weaver going down before the intermission phase. So well done here.
Now, the interesting thing about this phase that you'll have to keep an eye on here is, because they're in separate phases, it's going to be kind of weird to deal with Urgroth Breaker of Heroes. Genji could technically still pet taunt the Spirit Breaker, but it'd be a big damage loss for this phase. So got to keep an eye on Now here. He's kind of the main thing keeping this all together while he's kiting around both of those Awakened mobs as well as the Sunken Denizen down there as well.
Yeah, and Zali is going to be the one who needs to kill the Sunken Denizen so they can get out of that intermission phase and move on. Looks like they only dealt with... there we go. Yeah, it looks like they dealt with the Denizens, and now they're going to play it safe and finish off the Blood and the Corruptor as well. Maybe they only finish off the Tank Buster and then move on, but it looks like they are playing it safe, are not engaging this middle pack, finishing off the Awakened mob first before they move on, which is just a safe play. So theoretically, you could play the middle pack while still having the Blood, but they probably know that they're pretty far ahead at this point, so that there's no reason for them to risk anything like that.
Yeah, I mean, typically speaking, you deal with the Awakened mobs down there before you even deal with the second Forgotten Denizen, you just off-interrupt it. So, because once you have only one left, interrupting it is pretty easy while you're dealing with the final couple of Awakened mobs. So yeah, we see them clearly do that, and kind of waiting. Oh, they're waiting for Now to pull extra trash here on top of these Denizens. Are they going to go straight into their boss with this, though? That thing seems like it'd be pretty dangerous on Sanguine. Okay, no, they're not. They're not. Just gonna go ahead and cleave these three down. Oh, they are.
Yeah, they are.
Going for
okay,
it.
so yeah, they're going for it. So they have all of the mobs on top of each other here. You have the Eels, the Denizens, and Volsith. So that's why this can be dangerous, because they're about to die and Sanguine is gonna spawn. But it looks like Volsith didn't heal. So good job on them of being able to get Volsith out of those Sanguine pools that the Denizens spawn. The Eels do not drop Sanguine, but the Denizens do. So that's what that's what made this kind of a close call. But they managed to get the Volsith out. And it looks like they might be able to one-phase here if none of the...
Sure.
Yeah, so they're getting closer and closer, and yeah, one-phasing this boss in a +21 while also dealing with trash and eels at the same time. This is incredibly fast, but it's filling up the energy. There we go, they're missing a little bit of percentage.
There it is, the Sunken Denizen's still alive.
Yeah,
there you go, once the Denizen going down now.
Oh, wow, that was so fast.
What in the world?
Less than
Wunderbar!
17 minutes.
Yeah, that's crazy. Wunderbar taking the win, and when it comes to those kind of finesse dungeons as well, they have been absolutely ridiculously good at them. So, huge congratulations for that victory on that one, and that puts them up in the series 1-0 there, Tranos.
Yeah, this is completely wild. Like, at the start of the MDI Cups, we were excited about getting under 20 minutes in Shrine of the Storm. And now Wunderbar is under 17 minutes with Teeming and Fortified active together. And that is
and a higher keystone.
That's a slow combination. Yeah, the higher keystone, they do have a little bit more gear, so maybe those roughly cancel out or even are slightly in their favor. But still, that was blazing fast from them. And those pulls that they were doing looked so optimized, and it looks like they spent so much time just trying all kinds of different stuff in there, coming up with all those different pulls that we haven't seen other teams do before to make up all those extra minutes.
That's always one of the things I love to see as well. And there it is. They do set a new record. Their fastest previously was 1940, like you mentioned. Wow. And I love seeing these kind of strategies out of Wunderbar as well, Nagura, because they just go into some of these dungeons that have a lot more finesse, that have a lot that are just dungeons you have to constantly grind out and work through all those other pulls, and they just make it their home a lot of times. They just say, all right, sure, come play us on Shrine. We'll beat you.
Yeah, I think the one thing that impressed me the most about their strategies is that they really don't sit on a strategy that they had previously. It seems like from week to week in the Cups and now in the Global Final, they really just refine their strategies and even start doing completely different pulls they've never done before, like this Living Current pull that we have never seen before, and they just implement it into their strategies. They don't shy away of trying something completely new that no one else has ever done before, and they really just make it their own. And they really just have these kind of perfect strategies and perfect play, and it makes it look so easy when they do it.
Yeah, and it just goes to show how that 2 weeks of practice has made such an insane difference as well, Zyro. Just knowing that, hey, there's a couple dungeons you can really start setting aside that you're going to force everybody else to ban because there's no way that you'll be able to beat them. It's almost like, you know, where do they win? They already banned Freehold, which is one of the dungeons Wunderbar's perfected. Now they're showing ridiculous speeds in Shrine. Like, what do you do?
Well, it's funny because we were talking about how crazy good they were in Freehold, but I think they were also the first team that we saw actually one-phase Volsith earlier this year. So I feel like with Wunderbar, they're a team where you can't really ban them out. You might ban the map that they're perfect on, but you're leaving a map up that they have like a 95% good strategy on, so you're not really leaving yourself any holes at all. It's kind of crazy how good they are.
Indeed. And what were some of the parts that stood out the most to you throughout that run, Dranos? That we, not only was there that living current, but what else did you have?
Man, actually, the thing that most got me was watching Aquasur go from 6% health to 100% health on on Ethical's side.
Aww.
That was a tragedy that just resonated deeply with me. We've all been there, Sanguine. That moment where you're like, oh no. And then you're just like, you see it happening. You see Aquasur charging. You're like, that's not going to get to the Sanguine, right? And then it gets in the Sanguine. You're just like, you're just so sad. So it was an emotional time. But Ethical's gotten through it. They're into the next match, and that's what's important. Is game 2 they can still win, right?
Well, that's the thing is that not only can they still win, but we saw some great strategies as well out of them. Zyro, they just need to work on that execution with having the super sleep setup.
Yeah, so I was actually talking to one of my monk friends who used to play the game. Zealot. It's actually his birthday today, by the way. So
happy birthday
to Zealot. But yeah, no, he was pretty interested by the strategy, and I'm interested to see if it'll actually work out for them here. We saw that Song of Chi-Ji set up, and it just didn't go well for them last time. Chompy got hit by one of those bananas from the Banana Rampage, and it kind of scuffed the whole pull for them. They tried to save it. Song of Chi-Ji's a 30-second cooldown, so they could maybe reset it up with a second binding shot as well, go back into the Song of Chi-Ji, but it just looks like it's so difficult to set up. And maybe if they're able to pull it off, they can take a win here against Wunderbar, but they literally can't make any mistakes, because if they do, Wunderbar's going to pounce on them and take this series.
Yeah, and that's one of the things we've seen Ethical trying to get to that level where they could be the first team, the top team in North America. Now they're in the Global Finals, more time to practice and everything like that, Nagura, and this is their time to show. We've been looking at a number of times at how they've grown and developed, and at this point, they got to be able to perform.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, the fact that they made a mistake yesterday maybe even helped them for today for the siege strategy, because maybe it was a thing that didn't happen in practice. You know how it is, right? You practice something a million times in practice, and then on the tournament, just a completely new thing that happens that you've never seen before, and then you wipe because of it. So maybe they can fix their mistake for today and have this incredible strat that they're trying to pull off in that siege work out for them. Now, the one thing I would be worried about if I was them is that Wunderbar didn't actually ban siege, even though they know exactly what kind of strategy they have.
Yeah,
so
that's
that
always
either
a
means
worrying
Wunderbar
thought.
hopes they're making another mistake, or Wunderbar has an even better strat. So we'll see.
Yeah, from our perspective, that's insanely exciting, but you got to think as well from Ethical, they're like, oh no. Well, we'll see what they have as we're getting ourselves started. I believe both teams are Alliance for this one, so let's see what they got as Siege of Boralus gets going.
All right, so we are in Siege. We see both of the teams indeed playing Alliance. Siege is the only dungeon where you actually have not a different starting point, depending on if you play Horde or Alliance, and they also have some different mobs. But both of them playing Alliance, so people will have the mirror match, basically, as we see different strategies come in from both of the teams. Wunderbar straight walk to that obelisk, while Ethical immediately walk to the boss and pulls all of the trash together.
Yeah, I mean, we saw what Ethical did yesterday here. They go straight to this first boss room and initially pull this first trash pack, dealing with as little trash as possible, because they're going for that massive AoE pull with Song of Chi-Ji. And we'll see if it works out for them here. Method is dealing with the Breaker of Heroes here, so they'll have to deal with that. And we'll see. I mean, this dungeon is really going to come down to whether or not Ethical is able to pull off that Song of Chi-Ji pull, in my mind. Unless, hold on, let's check the MDI Gear app. Is Zalia running Song of Chi-Ji? Nope, they're not going for it. He's got Ring of Peace. So
okay.
they, Wunderbar didn't do the thing that they're very well known for doing, and they did this last year, they've done it this year. They see a strategy they like and like, you know what? I'm going to steal that, and we're going to do it better than you. They're not doing it here. One day is pretty difficult to actually kind of copy that strategy.
Yeah, so it looks like both of them are fighting the first boss here at the same percentage. Wunderbar actually pulled everything on top of the boss immediately, while Ethical was fighting the trash first for a little while and then pulled the boss afterwards. So they are slightly ahead in boss percentage, but not that much if you think about the fact that Wunderbar dealt with one obelisk already. So yeah, I mean, not a big advantage here for Ethical, considering that they will definitely have to deal with one obelisk at some point later on, because there's no way they can play all 4 obelisks with the last boss. It's incredibly difficult to deal with the awakened mobs just because of the fact how demolishing terrors work. You just have no way of moving away from them, otherwise they start AoEing your group. And that's why playing multiple obelisks on the last boss is incredibly difficult. And that's why Wunderbar already dealt with the tank faster.
Well, I mean, Wunderbar saved a bunch of time just by pulling trash on top of the boss.
Yeah.
I mean, you can just look at the damage meters here. The amount of free damage they got off of that and not having to split the pull up into 2 different pulls is pretty crazy. And that is an incredibly dangerous pull. You've got 2 powder shots in there that are just dealing damage to individual players. There's so much random damage going out on the group, and the fact that Wunderbar were able to pull that off by pulling it with the boss and have no issues whatsoever, and even kill the boss at roughly the exact same time as Ethical is incredibly impressive. I'd say this is exactly what Wunderbar needs to do to outright win the map, even if Ethical is able to pull off their pull.
Yeah, and now we see an even crazier pull here, it seems like, by Wunderbar, as they pulled this whole obelisk area here with the marauders and the patrol and the commanders. Just pulled everything around the corner here, around the house. A pretty dangerous pull by them on their side, while Ethical did do this pull in 2. They managed to deal with the marauders first, and then they engaged the rest of the mobs. But yeah, just a little bit slower compared to Wunderbar, as they're now moving on. Looks like they're not dealing with the obelisk here, while Ethical seems to be dealing with it. So Ethical definitely going inside. As far as I remember, Ethical is finishing off Voidweaver and then engaging the boss to get out of that Nyalotha realm. So just 2 different strategies here. Wunderbar dealing with the tank faster, while Ethical just chooses to do Voidweaver instead.
Yeah, and this is kind of weird because we talked about this a little bit yesterday. Voidweaver is one of the more easy awakened mobs to deal with in this dungeon because of how far to the left it spawns. It really only attacks your tank for the first 20 or so seconds of the fight, and usually at that point you're done with dealing with the first gripping terror, so you can more easily cleave it down at that point. Now, of course, you have triple hunters, so Inaros might be an issue if you don't focus it, but yeah, I don't know. It's probably just because of the position in the dungeon, right? Because that's where that awakened obelisk is, they kind of just need to pull it, but, you know, I still feel like it's a weird choice.
Yeah, they could theoretically just, because you can still do the skip, the boss skip, by going into the Nyalotha realm. You just activate the obelisk, then you walk to the boss, engage the boss, and then everyone is getting pulled out of the Nyalotha realm, right, without having to deal with the spider. So they could do the same skip that they're doing without having to finish off Voidweaver. But yeah, they choose to finish it off, and they're now engaging Dread Captain Lockwood, while Wunderbar also just now engaged Lockwood. What? They are ahead in trash. They're 38% trash, while Ethical is only 26. But again, if Ethical manages to pull off their spotter strategy that we've seen them fail yesterday, then they can definitely make up the trash percentage really quickly.
I mean, all of the things that we've talked about this Wunderbar team is they just have everything nailed down to a T. Yeah, they have some of the best damage players in the world. I mean, yeah, they're some of the most accomplished MDI players in the world, but the things that make them so good are the minute details. Like, they're so good at just general movement throughout the dungeon. Sometimes you'll see teams kind of sit around preparing a pull. You almost never see that from Wunderbar. They're almost always moving towards the next pull and saving the most amount of time possible. So even in a situation like this where Ethical has some, go-to strat that's going to potentially win them the dungeon, I'm not so certain about it against Wunderbar, right? They're just so good at dealing with the dungeon. It's all going to come down to these spotter pulls. Wunderbar probably has some way of dealing with a similar style of pull without the Song of Chi-Ji.
Yeah, and I feel like a lot of the times we see those like really crazy pulls, but as you mentioned, just because of the amount of setup time that it takes, it might not actually be something that is overall worth it if you could just do it without having this whole setup. That's why we sometimes see Wunderbar doing a dungeon really quickly without having anything that was like incredibly flashy. Right afterwards, when we analyze the dungeon, we are not like, oh my god, this one pull that was so incredibly crazy. We usually just run through the dungeon really quickly, as you mentioned, and even though they don't do anything incredibly flashy, they just do everything so fast without having any sort of downtime, without backtracking, without doing anything that is inefficient, and that just makes up so much time. And now we see Ethical and Wunderbar finishing off Dread Captain Lockwood, and they're so close to each other in dungeon speed if you do not consider the trash percentage.
It looks like neither of the teams were successful in one-phasing the boss. You have to get some pretty good timing with the avatars from your warriors in order to one-phase. It does end up costing you about 20 seconds overall, but since neither team was able to pull it off, it's not really that important anymore. Both teams going for a similar strategy are going into the Nyalotha realm with Samrak, Beckoner of Chaos. They're going to be dealing with this mob, probably dropping it down behind that spotter, if I had to imagine, or likely they'll just go into the into the third boss with it and then set up their pulls backwards from that point. Both teams are going to be going for that big AoE on top of that Haddle Dark Fathom. So, I mean, that's definitely a big breaking point in the dungeon as well. There's a lot that can go wrong with that pull with two commanders charging around, especially with triple hunter comps. So we'll have to keep an eye on that. But no, I'm wrong. Wunderbar? Okay, no, they're just going to have one person run ahead and pull a boss for them while everyone stays in the realm. This is a time loss for Ethical, though, not killing Samrak right away. And you can see, I mean, what we were talking about on Dread Captain Lockwood. Wunderbar, they're so refined in their strategies, right? They're just ready to go. And you can see it right here. It didn't matter that they killed it. They just set it up with Genji.
Yeah, I mean, this is just a small difference again, right? You have one team pulling the mob that wake him up all the way, while Wunderbar just kills it as soon as they can. They have Genji leave the Nyalotha realm, and Genji resets the boss and gets everyone out of the realm. So it's just like a slight difference in strategy, but it saves you a couple of seconds, and it really matters. This is a huge pull coming in by Wunderbar. As they pulled a lot of this area, we see the binding shot come out, and it looks like they're dealing with this with the spotters without any sort of CC. They're just using the binding shots and now getting in the spotter artillery.
And this is incredibly dangerous here. There's so many things to deal with. Those viscous slobbers can do a lot of frontal damage, and any of the banana rampage going off could stun anyone. But it looks like they have just this perfect execution here, and they don't even need the Song of Gigi. Okay. They're just that good. They just cleave everything down. And Ethical, they just pulled off your strategy without the talent that you were relying on to make it work.
Wow, that looks so easy, right? It looked like, oh, the whole trash is coming in, there's a binding shot, and now it's dead. They're up to 80% trash now with this one pull that they did, and they still have the trash left inside this Hadal room. They finished off the spotter. It looks like they just want to deal with this trash without even the friendly fire from the spotter. I think they just finished off the spotter, making sure they get out of combat, and now they're just dealing with this trash without the friendly fire. They're just gonna passively cleave it down with Hadal. So no spotter shenanigans at all, because it's just passive cleave that will kill it, right? Wow.
The thing that blows my mind is Wunderbar is so good that they don't even care about killing Haddle Dark Fathom first in order to set up that respawn point. So that if there are any issues or one of the hunters goes down during that massive AoE pull, they could just easily release and run back. They're so confident that they're like, nah, we don't need to do that. We're good. We got this. And they pull it off here. A little bit of a scary moment here for now. Those necrotic stacks are going up to about 30 stacks, and Zalia is going down here. Two of the hunters have their exhilaration available, so they're not necessarily in the most dangerous position, but they have to get that res off soon. You see it being cast by Fragments off in the corner there. Turtles pop to make sure he stays alive. And with Zalia alive, they should be fine. It just needs to top everyone else up before this next Frost Blast from the boss. And looks like they're going to be just barely fine here. But that's a scary moment they're having your healer going down whenever you have these two commanders out and charging.
Yeah, that definitely looks scary, and this is why this is such a dangerous pull, because the mobs were alive for quite a long time, and you see now had necrotic stacks on him. He's not playing dwarf, so there's no way of him to get rid of that necrotic stack unless he just kites it out, and the commanders can't be CC'd. So he was just running around, leaping and intervening to people, making sure he drops the necrotic stack, while Zalia went down. So that was a very scary moment, and good on them for being able to salvage this, because we've seen deaths on this boss where teams weren't able to get the engineering battle rest off, right? So good on them for having that turtle on fragments and getting the rest off to salvage this whole pool. Ethical, on the other hand, did down Hadal, but now they have to set up this spotter pool. So let's see if they can pull it off just as Wunderbar did.
I mean, I kind of want to see them pull it off, but I feel like now that I've seen Wunderbar pull it off, I don't really care anymore. As long as GG is cool and all, but like, if you don't need it to pull the pull off, the magic is lost on me here. I feel like an air going down. What did he die to?
I don't know.
That was weird, but here we go. Poll's being set up. Binding shot needs to come out from one of the hunters here whenever those trash start coming up the platform, and see Chompy set up for that Song of GG pull here.
All right, so let's
There's
see
the
how
binding shot.
deals with, yeah, we see the Vanisher come out there, RCC'd. He needs to wait until, there we go, Song of Chi is coming out, did manage to sleep most of them, but not all. Okay, it looks like most of them are in, there we go. Chumpy is going in with this friendly fire. Some of the mobs are still in the freezing trap, so you see the snipers. I'm not sure if they need the percentage of the snipers that are in the freezing trap there, but if they need it, they need to make sure they break it to get the friendly fire up there. But it looks really cool, right? I mean, I really like this strategy, and it looks so nice when they do it. But as you mentioned, WUNDERBAR doing this without the Song of Chi, they have way less setup time, right? You don't need any of those freezing traps. You don't need to have all of the other shenanigans. You just pull it all, binding shot, and you just run in. So
WUNDERBAR's like, hey, that was a cool pull, but hey, we're pulling the final boss already over here while you guys are still dealing with the Crushers. Already almost done with the first Gripping Terror, and since they only have 2 Awakened mobs left to deal with, this is going to be an incredibly easy pull for them. They don't have to deal with that Urgroth Breaker of Heroes that we saw Ethical just skipping right away early on. So yeah, I mean, WUNDERBAR, with that first Gripping Terror dead, they should be pretty much free to deal with these 2 Awakened mobs and home free afterwards.
Yeah, definitely. We'll see if they play it safe. At most teams we've seen so far, they made sure to finish off the Awakened mobs before they were shooting the cannon. Because if you don't shoot the cannon, the second platform doesn't actually get triggered. And therefore you just have all the time in the world to finish off Void Weaver and the Blood here. And it looks like Maris is staying behind though. Yeah, Maris is definitely staying behind a little bit further so he can shoot the cannon. There we go! They engage the cannon without actually finishing off those 2 Awakened mobs, so they want to make it even harder on themselves. So they have to deal with the Demolition Terror now while also dealing with Void Weaver and the Blood. And you see how little space there is, right? That's why Maris just jumped into the water. But that's why they're standing so far away to make sure that they don't put the pools all over the platform.
Yeah, cleaving the Awakened mobs on top of the Demolishing Terror is it's a pretty safe choice, right? The important thing is when you engage the Gripping Terror. Now, if they pulled both of those Awakened mobs on top of the second Gripping Terror, then I would have been impressed. Like crazy. Okay, they're just pulling the Blood on top of it. Never mind, these guys just throwing caution to the wind here. They are insane. I mean, they're just that confident. They know they have the damage to push before the third Demolishing Terror spawns. It's crazy how good they are.
Yeah, and they waited for the Blood to be a little bit lower, but then they immediately pulled it on top. Again, these are things that will save... I mean, this is definitely risky to do, but it will save you a couple of seconds, and that means they'll do it, right? They are just super confident in their abilities to handle this kind of stuff, and they will just pull it off, even though they know they're ahead, right? They don't need to do this right now, because they know that they engaged the last boss a lot faster than Ethical did, so theoretically they wouldn't have to risk this. But they want to pull it off anyway because this is the strategy they have practiced and they're so confident in what they're doing that they're just going to pull it off even if they are ahead in the dungeon. And now they're moving on to the last platform, engaging that last Gripping Terror, which they're just going to nuke down. And once they have this Gripping Terror done, they're going to be 2-0ing Ethical, and in what a clean manner as well.
I mean, you got to hand it to Ethical too. They were able to put together a clean run, but WUNDERBAR just on another level, it seems, here in this tournament. And I guess they really don't want to see a repeat of that spring finals that we had last year against former Method and A in that grudge matchup between EU and NA and making that series 3-0. They really don't want to see that one happen again. Gripping Terror goes down for WUNDERBAR here, and all we'll take is that final cannon shot to take this series 2-0 and guarantee them a top 3 finish here at our MDI Global Finals.
That's right, boss goes down, and WUNDERBAR absolutely putting on an incredible show to take that Siege of Boralus.